I'll apologize right here. I'm sorry. I apologize.
I was going to whoop your
Yeah. No,
living.
for sure. Okay, so we'll give a little bit more
Oh,
context.
yes, please tell this
Yeah.
story.
So,
Oh, yeah.
hey y'all, welcome to the first episode of BuzzHub. Super excited to get this off the ground. I've been talking about this for a long time, and I felt like there were no better guests to have for my inaugural episode than my parents. To me, they're mom and dad, but to the rest of the world, it's Michelle and Andre Chevalier, two of my best friends, two very respected basketball coaches. I am gonna say thank you for making time, but you guys really didn't have a choice. But yes, thank you guys.
Glad to be
Yay.
here.
Excited
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, and so I love having you guys here, especially because I could have you guys on as individual guests and your individual resumes would speak volumes, but today you're just going to be here as mom and dad. So to start, I did want to talk about what it looked like for you guys to support me through my mental health struggles. But before we get into that, I wanted to explicitly state my diagnosis and what I've been diagnosed with over the years because I don't think I've ever really talked about it online. So my freshman year, I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and insomnia. And then it wasn't until a few years down the line that I was re-diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And I remember being so nervous to tell you guys about both of them. But I want to hear what it was like for you. So I want you guys to walk me through it. And mom, tell me what it was like for you first.
Cool. You come out heavy swinging already. Yikes. Um, it's been challenging, obviously walking hand in hand with you throughout this whole entire journey. Um, and for me, it's been difficult, I think, because as a parent, we do wear two hats. Yes, we wear the coach's hat and we have the parent hat, but it's always our parent hat first. So as a parent, we want to try to protect you as much as possible. We want to, as best as we can, guide you and help you navigate things, right? And so being diagnosed, your freshman year and having these difficulties and life-changing experiences, I think the hardest thing for me was not getting the right support earlier and right away, and frankly reaching out to a coach who controlled that and not being taken serious about it. That's the most challenging part about it for me, because as a parent, I can only do so much from home. And once we hand you off to whoever is caring for you and guiding you in the next phase of your life, and trying to be transparent with them and see if we can get the help that you need and not being taken serious, it's crushing. And
Yeah.
so now we're trying to manage something that's bigger than all of us, and not having the proper resources, because there's a level of shame involved or embarrassment. I'll never forget, Ashley. I'll never forget the day where you were so terrified because you needed medication. That you were told you had the diagnosis, and you expressed and you were crying and you were emotional and like, am I always going to need this? Like, what does this mean? And that was the most heartbreaking thing, is like, again, just trying to share it with people I thought needed to know so they can help guide you from being in a closer space. And that's my expectation, certainly from the coach's hat. I want to help my student athletes as best as possible. So I think that's the hardest place, is feeling like my hands were tied and just wanting to support you and love you and not make it even more, just trying to love you through it all at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you, Dad?
Yeah, I think it was a myriad of emotions for me, right? Because like you said, like I'm a coach as well. So I think I'm always trying to push people to their limits and to the next level. And you made me really have to think about um how far I was pushing people and what I was requiring from them as basketball players and people, and not really like thinking about what they might be going through off the court. So that was a big deal for me. I also think that because like I'm dad and like I'm supposed to protect you, it was hard for me to like be so far away, as your mother said, but also want to be right beside you to like walk you through the process and stand up for you and do everything that was necessary, whether it was me doing it or whether it was me going to the university on your behalf. Like it was crazy for us that you were going through everything that you were going through and having to stand for yourself. Um, so that was a bit difficult. And then like you were playing for a monster on top of this shit, right? Like the coach wasn't open to even like seeing that it was a possibility that you were hurting, that you had a medical issue that you were dealing with. So that it was tough. And it seemed like no matter what we did with him, he was never going to openly accept that you needed to talk to somebody, that you needed to, some adjustments made in order for you to be as successful as you wanted to be. So definitely it was a very trying time for us, as individuals, and then for us as a collective, as your parents.
Yeah. And, both of you guys made me think of something that I remember. I wasn't a part of the conversation, but mom had told me afterwards that, my mom had reached out to the coach and told him about the situation and everything that I was struggling with. Um, and his response was, I'm sure if she was playing more, she wouldn't be as depressed. And that's why I'm trying to have these conversations. And, like, that's a part of it. And sometimes coaches, like you said, you guys had to do some reflection on your own. Have to like understand that it's not always like it can't be triggered by basketball. It may even be fully because of basketball, but it's not necessarily directly related to playing time and performance. But something mom said, I think you might sometimes we kind of create narratives that might not necessarily be what it is. Um, and mom, you talked about medication, and I do remember being kind of nervous to start it, but I honestly remember you being more reluctant than I was because you didn't want me to depend on it a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember I had conversations with dad too because I was talking to you and you were kind of making me nervous about it. And I had to call dad and like get another opinion because like what do you do as an athlete when you're hearing you've depended on your mom or your dad to take care of you in sickness, in everything, and that's who you listen to. And now I have medical professionals that are at my disposal easier than my parents, honestly. And I had to like go between the two. I really had to make my own decision and become my own person. And I want to hear from you because both of you guys come from backgrounds where mental health is not talked about. So when you are sitting here, and I grew up and I was always somebody who talked about mental health, and it was like kind of just from where I was from, where I grew up. And I kind of want to talk about like narratives that you guys had to deal with internally because of where you grew up, and the fight between that from where you grew up and what you're used to and everything.
At the end of the day, I do recall when you told me we just started to discuss the conversation about medication. Yes, I was fearful. That my initial reaction was, you know, although you were already expressing enough fear, I know I have to wear that hat sometimes and put on a front like I'm not scared. And obviously I didn't do a good job. I thought I did at the time, you know, but I did check myself. I literally I'm all constantly learning with you, Ash. Parenting you, especially through this journey, has been so challenging, and but allowed us to grow in ways and come together in ways and heal from a lot of different things because we've had to come together as a family unit to support you through it all. But that medication piece, I remember checking myself because I felt your reserve with me. And so I felt it. And then I had to just put on, like, I just need to love you through it and support you through it. It wasn't my intention, and I didn't want to give you some sort of negative perception associated with it, right? The stigma of needing medication, being on medication. And so I just remember trying to love you and support it, but in private, I was boo-hooing. I was praying, like, God, help her through this, So yeah, there is and was, and just as a parent, I think it's important because we've been through it on so many levels and for so long, trying to navigate this space that none of us were prepared for and unfamiliar with. And at the end of the day, I will say that when I supported you on the medication aspect, yeah, I was terrified myself, but I had to put on a front, and clearly I didn't do a good job of that because you went to dad like,
I
yeah.
mean, and that happens, and that's the reality, and that's what we're talking about. And we honestly, as a collective, all three of us, we've never sat down and had this conversation about what I feel like you guys could have done better, what I took too long for me to do, and that's like, and that's part of this, we want to help other people because it's such a common thing. So, Dad, with what I kind of mentioned earlier, because we've had conversations where you explicitly told me you grew up in a place where mental health wasn't even like a phrase, like you didn't bring that up.
Absolutely.
I want to know, did you have any like internal battles from like those toxic traits that you learned from the way you grew up in the community you grew up in?
Yeah, I think that definitely, where I come from, it's not ever a mental health thing. Like we never would even consider it being a mental health thing because, the situation that we were living in required us to always push through, right? Like you don't get to say like, I'm having a mental health day, I'm too tired. That wasn't something that was ever talked about, where I grew up. So honestly, when a mental health things start coming up, I was like, it was bullshit. Like this is just straight bullshit because like, you don't have a choice but to keep on going. So, why would you even consider talking about mental health? So a bit before you got to college, right? Like those things became buzzwords. And I used to be like depression is not real. Like like the mental health stuff is not real. And so until I went through something that made me tap into the reality of what depression is and how it might destroy your life. And so that was the first time where I really like had to like really like sit down with it and sit with it and see how it could like literally stop you in your tracks. So that was the first time that I really, was like, oh, this is something that's really real. I need to understand it and be able to not just help. At the time, I was just trying to help myself get through and recover. And so it was something that I had to really learn so that I could start to help my athletes. And I was an administrator at a school, so it wasn't just about the athletes; it was about everybody that was walking around the campus. But yeah, nah, like you can't. Where I come from, you can't say I'm having even anxiety, which I think is supposed to be the lowest form of it. You couldn't like I'm having anxiety about this and that. No, that'd be like, oh no, this is just life. You got to push through and work through. So I definitely had to learn to accept that it was a real thing. And I think sometimes when like you're resistant, God puts things in your way to make you know, like, you need to check yourself and recognize this is real. And so, with you, it became very real and something that I had to like really think about, really think about how I could help you uh, and really try to tap into like what you might be going through. Because just because I'm thinking that I have to navigate it a different way, right? I had to learn that you had to deal with your stuff the way that you deal with your stuff. And so it definitely was a journey for me to get to a place of understanding, so that I could support you and love you through it.
I think that that narrative around mental health is still such a thing that fluctuates, you know. Some people think that people lean too much into it or, use it as an excuse and everything. And, when you brought up the anxiety piece of it, it really like triggered something for me because it's like I would have never, before I got to college, like, because I didn't you have moments of like performance anxiety, a big game, and you feel it then. But for me, the way that I experienced it on a daily was so foreign to me. I used to not be able to sleep because I was having dreams about practice. I would go to sleep and I was still in practice. I never got a break. And that's the type of anxiety that I was at, literally having like from mini to major panic attacks before practices. And it's exhausting. And it's like I was going through this every single day. And it still was like I was still fighting myself a lot. I still wasn't trying to go to therapy as much as I needed. I still didn't want to believe that medication was a necessity. And part of that is like not even just you guys, but in conversations with other adults, and the reluctancy of utilizing the resources that we have nowadays. And sometimes, it could be from a religious standpoint. We hear a lot that like, God's going to make everything right, God's going to fix you and all the things. And while that is true, and there is a support, there is a healing that God can perform, that at the end of the day, when it comes to mental health, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, like even eating disorders, it is like a chemical imbalance in your brain. And we don't like to like see it that way. And we don't like to acknowledge it that way. And especially like I would say especially coaches, from my experience, like it's not a reality. It's not true,
Yeah, for us. I mean, your mom and I are both high level coaches, so like a part of what we do is push people to the brink,
Mm.
right? Because we want them to perform at the highest level. So we're always pushing them to that line. And I don't think that because of where she and I come from, we weren't ever considering that what we were doing could cause somebody to have like an anxiety attack or fall into depression. Because for us, we were trying to make everybody be elite, reach your full potential. And sometimes for us, that means yelling, screaming, and cussing, right? Like we want to shock you into finding your greatness. And so we would have never considered that we were doing something that could hurt somebody or push them into like anxiety or depression. So yes, we definitely had to read, learn, talk to each other, like to try to find that balance. And even to this day, like I'm still trying to push people to the edge, but I do understand that I'm if I'm doing that, I need to follow up with a phone call, a text to check on the, to see like I pushed you today. How are you feeling about that? What do you think I'm trying to do? And then also check to see how are things in your life. Are you okay as a person outside of basketball? So your experience definitely helped me to become a better coach and a better person.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. And I think it's also important to mention too, like, first of all, based on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as the mental health issues started to, rear itself, um, it started with some traumas that were not basketball related, traumas and things that you were exposed to off the court, right? hell, you were trying to be something that coaches should have been, and that was love and support and trying to help. Like, you were a kid helping another kid.
Yeah.
And what was crazy is, even as a freshman, you had this, you always been an innate leader, right? But you have this gravitational pull where people just gravitated to you. And I, even the coaches would call me and tell me this. You were like the mama of all the freshmen, right? And it was the mismanagement of a lot of that stuff that then compounded. And I mean, I remember literally some of my prayers and telling you, like, you can't go down that rabbit hole. I felt like you might get pulled down this direction. And no, it was the same mismanagement of addressing issues. And that's why I felt like I wanted to be the bridge, right? I wasn't going to be afraid to make a call to a coach, because I'm not calling you about playing time. And I remember saying that, I'm not calling about playing time. This is a freshman playing 15 minutes on a nationally ranked team. I'm not calling you complaining about playing time. We happy. Like, you know, everybody loves her. But no, it was the other piece. It was not having the support and the check-ins, the meaningful check-ins, and especially after some very, very hard traumas that you were exposed to. No 18-year-old should have to experience that and then to be expected to practice like nothing happened.
Hmm.
Yeah, Ash, I have a question for you. You spoke about like you would go to sleep like often thinking about the next practice and having anxiety, right? And depression and causing you to have panic attacks. In retrospect, like if there's an 18-year-old going through what you were going through at the time, like how would you advise that 18-year-old kid to navigate the same exact situation that you had to deal with?
Yeah, I feel like that's always such a hard question for me to answer because I think that, you know, a little bit, I feel like I'm trying to figure that out still too, because I feel like every time I talk about my experiences, my stories, people like to throw it in my face that I'm using it as an excuse. I'm using it because, like, if you look at my career, I didn't play that much, I didn't average that much and everything. But like, there are things that I wish I could have done differently too, for sure. I think that advocating for myself is definitely something I wish I could have done more because I fell into that trap of feeling that if I came and I talked to them about this, that it would affect the basketball. Because as much as I was struggling, I still wanted to be successful in basketball. It's not that you just don't care about that anymore. It's not that you just, everything that I've worked up my whole life, like, that is just goes out the window because that's still important to me. That's why I still ended up showing up every day. And I think that's why it can be hard for coaches to see it. Because for me, I was still coming to practice every day and still doing what I had to do and still being the first to finish, one of the first to finish in sprints, still being the hardest working person out there. Like, I was still up there. I was still, for the most part, you have your days as a person in general, but like I was still, you would see consistency within the practices and everything. But I was afraid that it would shift their perspective on me as a player if I would talk to them about things that I was going through as a person. And I would say, like, to let go of that fear for sure is something that I would tell the 18-year-old version of myself or any other young athlete going through these type of things too. Don't be afraid to lean into the help that you can really get. And luckily for me, like, I was able to talk to you guys, and not everybody has that. The type of relationship that we have, as parent daughter, it's not something that we see consistently or that people have that support. So I would say that's something that I would say for sure. But I like what you said, Mom, about when you talked about, you caught yourself coaching sometimes. And that's something I would change too, is that it took me a long time to advocate for myself, even with you guys, in terms of like, I do disagree with the fact that it naturally parent came first for you guys when I came and talked to you about basketball. Um, and a lot of the times I was calling for mom and dad and I got Coach Chevalier. And that's something that I wish I could have. advocated for myself, because it would have changed a lot. Because, every day, especially during COVID, every day my only interaction was with the coaches. And then I was calling you guys looking for, the other type of support, and I'm getting coaches. And that's something that in terms of a dynamic, because even we see that with parents who aren't coaches, they're still coaching their kids. They're still like doing those things. And I think for me, it was harder because your resumes, how am I going to sit here and tell them, like, no, I don't need to hear that right now? These are some of the best coaches in California. And I had to train myself. And I really didn't even get to do that until I was, what, 23, 24. Like, I allowed that for so long. And I think that would have changed a lot for me if I would have advocated for the support that I felt like I needed from my parents. Because if I'm not going to advocate for myself with you guys, I'm definitely not going to do it with, coaches, other people. And like sometimes fear, sometimes the narratives that we make up in our own heads stop us. And it takes a lot out of our own sales. Like, I took the win out of my own sales a lot, and that's something I would ask like other athletes, to kind of recognize. But moving on a little bit, you guys truly witnessed me hit rock bottom. You know, from seeing me with anxiety attacks, you guys would get calls with me bawling. Even seeing the physical changes, because I went through a lot of physical changes, whether it was gaining weight, losing weight, all the things. And it was all at the hands of mental health. And you guys have talked about, my question linked to that was, did it change your perspective on how you coach? And you both have answered and said how that has changed you as, coaches and everything. But I want to know, like, were there any conversations that you can remember where kind of like clicked, or kind of something was triggered when you guys had conversation as parents with each other? And how you guys kind of talked about supporting me, and if there, what you would kind of relate to other parents.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that your journey has heightened my awareness for mental health, my sensitivity. I'm hypersensitive as a coach now. Um, and just being aware, but it's made me a better coach, right? A better person for these young adults, right? Because I could never understand how I felt so many people have failed you in that space, that it made me like I still have the ability to impact so many other people, right? Um, so we watched a lot of people get hurt through coaching, frankly, just not being everything that the title, encompasses. Um, it really shifted. I mean, my shift with understanding the difference between a transactional coach and a transformational coach happened during my master's program, right? When I was going for my master's in coaching and athletic administration. And that really kind of brought in my perspective already, right? But I'm still kind of that old school hard ass, and demand the most and push you to your limits, like Dad said. And we've experienced a lot of success that way, right? A lot of it. But it's that mindfulness, number one. It's about prioritizing the person, right? It's not about what these young people can do for us versus what we can do for them and help you all grow. So it has definitely changed, and your experience has impacted my life in so many ways. Like, I feel like I experienced a lot of even the not just the traumas. You're my baby, right? You are the baby. And so navigating this thing alongside with you, I experienced depression. I experienced anxiety. I really did. I have to tell you, some of the calls when my phone would ring in the middle of a day, those were my traumas, because I was afraid. I was terrified. Like, what happened? And I would get calls where I genuinely was worried about you on the other end of that line and wondering if I'm going to see my baby the next day. So when we started getting into, the thoughts of suicide and like, right, we putting it all out there. That shit was hard. That shit was scary. And so I was traumatized because Ashley's calling me. I got to stop in the middle. I don't care what I'm doing. I got to pick this up because I don't know. Her life might depend on it. Right? So, man, I'm so tuned in to my student athletes and their needs. Mental health is very real. It's prevalent. It's growing. It's not decreasing, but I don't know. I think people are just more talking about it now. And okay, we've created safe spaces for it. And I'm just so proud of you for leaning into it because your journey was rough. It was rough, and watching you go through that, yeah, we're still recovering from that. Frankly, we're all still healing as a family with you.
Absolutely. I think for me, mom spoke about going through her master's program, right? And when she was going through that program, she read a book, Coaching Inside Out. I
Yep,
think it is.
inside out coaching.
Yeah. So I think that was something that like made me really like dive into like what am I doing right and wrong? How can I make an adjustment? And thinking about the players and what they might be going through, even as I'm walking into practice, right? Because before, like, you step into practice and you like it's monster mode, right? Like so that made me take a look around the gym to see like who might have a sad face, right? Who might be looking different or operating different? And is there a way for me to tap into them before they start the practice to see if they're okay? This past year I started writing notes to the players. And I think it surprised them that I took the time just to simply like, oh, I thought about you and wrote you a note. So I think that really I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't experienced what you had gone through. Right. So I think your journey helped not just the three of us, but it helps hundreds of people because your mom and I touch hundreds of people over the course of our everyday life. And so learning little things that could like support and help somebody, asking a person how they're doing, that goes a very long way. And I think that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so for me, I want to try to care first, all right, and win second. And that's new.
For sure. Just the last part of this little segment, and what exactly would you say to a parent that is in a situation like yours? Because we know there's hundreds of them out there.
Don't let your experience with mental health stop you from helping your child or somebody else who's going through something, right? Hear them, hear them, all right, and help them, and let them vent to you, talk to you, and come to you for advice. Because I think for me, like I had a little wall up, and because of the way that I grew up and how I was told that it to push through, and that for black men, you're a black man, you should expect to go through, right?
Mhm.
Like this is normal for you as a black man. So that experience probably stopped me from hearing, at first hearing you, because as a coach and a black man, I'm like, you got to get through this. You got to keep moving. You got to show them, like, you got to prove yourself. And I would just say to every black man, every parent, to hear your child and be open to what they're saying, being a truth, right? Not just for them as a person, but just being a truth, period, so that you can help.
Yeah, Dad nailed it. I feel like while you were going through it, I was already leaning into it and trying to coach parents how to be parents. Big time. My advice to parents is to show up in love. Show up in love. And like you said, you made an excellent point about how every day you were surrounded by coaches. So when you reached out to us, you just wanted the love and support, and you wanted the parent. And we gave you coaches, right? Because that was just our nature. We trying to coach you through stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is part of being a parent, but at the same time, just listening and loving, listening, loving, and supporting. And whatever that looks like, we don't sometimes we don't need to fix everything. We just need to listen,
Yeah.
right? My first instinct is, how am I gonna fix it? How am I
Yeah.
gonna help you? How am I
Right.
gonna, how can I da 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 da? And I feel like I've definitely gotten better at just loving you.
Yeah.
Just loving you through all of it. Because at the end of the day, people have lost their kids. And especially in college, and that was very rampant, especially your freshman year, and you're hearing on the news and student athletes taking their lives. And not even just limited to student athletes, but there's this expectation level and all of these things, and then you're getting even more expectations from home. Imagine, I can never imagine what a parent who lost their child when all they wanted was love and support. And now you got the parent still pushing, pushing, pushing. So from that part, I'll apologize right here. I'm sorry. I apologize for, not knowing when I just needed to just freaking hug you and love you. But that's what parents need to do. We need to, there's a fine line. There's a fine line. And you just have to prioritize being a parent first. Got me a whole mess, but this is good. This is so important. I love what you're doing, and we support you, and we love you.
Man, to that. You are everything to us. Everything.
Thank you guys. And I really do appreciate, the apology part of it and everything. And we've had like some similar conversations in private, but I think it's important that we have it as a unit because, this is my unit. And I think it's important for people to see that it is possible, for people to see what it's like, the real, raw, uncut, type of vibe of it. So I'm loving it so far too, but we're gonna shift it a little bit to what it was like to coach your kids because you didn't just coach me and everything. And one of the first things that people do when they find out that I am a product of two coaches is follow up with like 5 questions about what the dynamic was like. So I want to talk about it with the 3 of us. So we can get into it a little bit. But I guess to start off, would you, if you could look back, and this is mostly looking at just like the coaching, when you guys actually coached me, because I played for mom, I played for dad, I played for mom and dad on the same staff. I've had every dynamic.
Yeah.
And so would there be something that you would want to do differently or you wish we could have done differently?
I think that I would have treated you like I treated every other kid, right? Because I think I was holding you and Dre to a higher standard. And also, I was coaching you guys harder so that other parents wouldn't think that I was giving you an advantage. And so I think I would have backed off of that and tried to treat you like I was treating a kid who was just in the organization. And I think it's always hard though as a father who's coaching their kids because you are trying to push them to the next level, and you feel like you have a little bit more carte blanche to dive deeper into your psychology, because I am going home with you. I am feeding you. I am around you all the time. So just like mom and I are trying to push kids to the next level, we felt like we knew you and Dre so deeply that we could drive you harder than we should have been driving you, especially at the age that you guys were at. So I think I would have taken a step back and seen you as a child instead of my child, if you understand.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. For me, I feel like I've always done it right. No, I'm just kidding. I feel that's that. No, there's what,
Coaching, that's
in
Coach
all
Chevalier
honesty,
talking
no,
right there.
Yeah,
I
right.
I feel like I had enough exposure and learning from other parental mistakes because being a coach for so long, like I was pregnant with you, Ash, when I got my first high school coaching job, right? So you grew up in that scene, and I feel like watching, and I coached some elite level athletes from the beginning and throughout. So watching some of the parents and feeling, and overdoing it, and even growing up in high school, I always felt like your papa, my dad, I don't know, he had that secret ingredient. He would talk to me, he would offer advice, but he wasn't like grinding me. And he was even on my bench my senior year. He was an assistant coach my senior year. So he's on the bench. But I never felt that. So I don't know. I think I kind of learned from that too, where I feel like when I coached you, I feel like I coached you in a way. I was just sharing this story with somebody. I was coaching you before
To
you
see
know,
this.
I'm waiting for you
literally
to
I
clear
mean,
was.
this one
too.
up,
As
boy.
somebody who has young
Point of
kids,
You see me and Ashley leaning into the computer right?
just for
Yeah,
y'all,
I'm
stop
waiting.
teaming up on me. But I was sharing this story because I'll never forget it. I remember your brother was at Oaks Christian playing football, so we would have to go and wait for him to get out of practice, and me and you would go pick him up. And there was like these rolling hills, and I'm like, Ashley never knew she was training. I had her training before she knew she was training. Like I always made it fun. I'll be like, girl, I bet you can't get there and back and da 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 da. And it's so funny because I don't know if I've ever told you that. Like I had you doing crazy things and running, a lot of stuff where I'm like, man, Ashley never knew she was training. She was just having fun. She was just being a kid. But I
Please get to the coaching
I
part,
took
please.
until you asked for the training. That's when it got real. You were
Very
about 12 when that
interesting.
happened.
You are
Very
not answering this
interesting.
question right
At
now.
all.
Am I
But
not? I'm
I will
No.
saying
say I mean, she's saying she doesn't really feel like she would
no.
change
I
much.
honestly feel like, for parents, I feel like because you asked how would I do it differently?
Would
I
you?
With
Yeah.
wouldn't.
her, with Ashley, like how you
So
coached
that's
her.
what I'm saying. Like with Ashley, I felt like I was very cautious about keeping it fun, keeping it fun, challenging her. I mean, she was a hard-head, stubborn kid anyway, so she brought on her own.
Okay, now okay. Well, anyway, I will
I
just
wouldn't change a
I'll
thing.
I'll
You were
chime
ready.
in
You were
here.
primed and prepped and ready for
Well,
national television.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and chime in here, and I'll say that
please
um
do.
well, I'll start with what you said first, Dad. Like I can definitely like understand that because I think that there was you guys coached me differently for sure. And when it came to Dad, like it was definitely like more of the hard, getting into it, like ruthless, like whether it's the coaching, whether it's talking about going to him and be like, what do I need to do differently? Or talking about him a game. And like, we'll keep it a buck. My dad would literally sit there and tell me I sucked at that game. And that's, and with that, I don't think that that was something that I would change. I did like because you would tell me the the reality. You would get down and dirty in it, like you would, no sugarcoating. Mom, you're a little bit different. You do more praise. And I think you guys balanced each other out in that. And when it comes to like when I was with you, Mom, you definitely had a higher standard for me. And you had like you put an expectation on me as a child. Like if when we look, because you ran my AAU program, I was with you for a majority of my AAU career. And I remember like one time that the team, we had got in trouble, and when it was time where you had to talk to me about it, and it was you, me, and Dad, I believe, you were like, I expect more of you. You're supposed to keep them in line. And this wasn't even in basketball. This is like we got in trouble
Mhm.
off the court.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and Dad had to tell you like that's not her job.
Yeah.
Like she's still a dumb young kid. Like she doesn't need to, whatever. And but like I did feel like that I had an additional responsibility. Even like in times where I remember there were some times where the expectation was like you wanted me to room with you, and I was like, no, like I want to room with my teammates like everybody else. You know what I mean? Like there's things like that. um where that's what I would say when it comes to you and I, that I would change a little bit. Like you definitely saw me as like a coach slash player beyond the like connection between a point guard and a coach, for sure. Like you definitely had a little bit more of an expectation of me to keep people in line and like
Yeah.
and everything, and that wasn't necessarily fair to me. And that's something I would say that I wish was a little bit different, for sure. Yeah.
You guys remember the time when I had to take you into the foyer? I was going to kill you.
Oh yeah, because no, you didn't take me. I stormed out of a game. You
She
talking about that
left.
time?
Well, I was going to whoop your
Yeah,
living.
no, for sure. Okay, so we'll give a little bit more
Oh,
context.
yes, please tell this
Yeah.
story.
So
Oh,
I
yeah,
it was
because that's the time when we were both coaching her. You were
Yes.
head
Oh, I
on.
yeah,
know it very well.
Oh
yeah,
my
it was
God. I went into that foyer. I was about to light her.
I had to pull
I
him
would have
aside and said,
No, you
"Don't
weren't even
even think
there.
no,
about it."
you
No,
weren't
you were on the
there.
sideline still. The game.
Yeah,
Oh,
because it
you
was
went out.
during
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
game. So
Yes, it
okay,
was college
let
coaches in
me
the
give
gym. There was
Tell him
college
let
why.
me
coaches
give some
Tell him
everywhere.
why.
context. Let me give some context.
Yes, please give the context.
So my last year of AAU, both of them coached me together. And it might
Mhm.
have been it was one of the last tournaments of
Yeah,
like
it
the
was in Pennsylvania, wasn't it? That
yeah.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
And I was going through some like mental blocks as a player. I was struggling. I was frustrated with myself, and going through some like personal things in terms of feeling like if I was good enough. I had just signed to Texas, and I was like going through a thing if I was good enough, if I was not, and it was reflecting in my play and everything. And I was very frustrated with myself, and I was performing badly that game, and I got subbed out, and my dad was getting on me pretty bad, and I was like already up here, and then he took me up here, and I stormed out off the bench into the foyer, and boy, my dad didn't let me take 2 steps before he caught me, boy.
He
Nah,
snatched
yeah,
you.
yeah, no, he definitely did, and was like, you better get back in there. You gotta find your way back home by yourself. He's like, I don't know where
Oh,
you're gonna go without us, but go ahead and try to figure it out. He's like, you got two choices here. But yeah, no, I
yeah.
definitely remember that for sure too. But that's just one of those things again where like that made us have the conversation that like because I was going through it internally, like you guys could probably see it, but I didn't talk about it with you guys. That I was like going through those things of wondering if I even deserved to go to Texas and whatever and how those things were. But yeah, that was definitely not that was not one of my favorite moments of
Mine
ASU or
either.
being coached by y'all at
Mine,
all. But
mine either.
I remember like one or two times where you felt like you had to snatch me up. But I mean, it was one of those. I looking back, like I deserved it, so I ain't even mad at it. But because I don't feel like I necessarily like did that much, but yeah, I deserved it those times that Dad got there because it takes him a minute to get there with me, especially for sure. And I was
Exactly.
honestly lucky because like y'all went through it with Andre first. Well, Dad, Mom, you didn't necessitate like in terms of actually coaching him, but you guys kind of figured out, but you coached him on the sideline, or you coached him after for sure all the time too. And he definitely got it harder than me because you guys don't know anything yet. You guys, it's your first time really going through it, and everything. So there are some things that like, we'd probably have to bring him on too to talk about his experiences because his is going to be different than mine because you actually at this point you already had implemented rules, Dad, with between Andre and you because it kind of there was a friction at some point because of that dynamic, the coaching your kid dynamic and everything. So talk about like the rule that you implemented or what you felt like, why you felt you had to do it and everything.
Yeah, I think probably to control myself, right? And to make sure that I wasn't overdoing it with you guys, I came up with the 15-minute rule. So when we get in the car after a game, you go into the locker room with your coach. We jump in the car. I get to ask you questions and push you for 15 minutes. And then at that 15-minute mark, I have to stop. And I will have to say, Ashley used the rule well.
I surely did.
Yes.
I would look at that little
Yeah,
card,
timer.
that car
You'll be on
clock,
the
and
clock.
clock
And
it.
I'll be mid-sentence sometimes, be like, your 15 minutes is up.
The
So
first
yeah,
thing I did.
for real, like it was good for me, right? Because I can give you what I need to give you, get it out of my system. And then at the 15-minute mark, I go back to being dad and what do you want to go eat? And I think I learned how to use that rule well, right? Because my coaching instinct would say, keep pushing, keep pushing. So yes, I definitely was able to practice with Andre. And he used the rule a couple times too, like 15 minutes, dad. And I'm like, all right, cool. It took me a little bit of a couple of tries with him
Right.
before I got right. But I think that really saved our relationship because I did learn to flip from coach to dad pretty quickly. And so it was cool.
Yeah, I definitely had to throw that with mom in a little bit too, because she just kept talk about it all day, and that literally would be what we talked about the rest of the night. But I think that was definitely important for us because like it needs to be normalized to have some type of boundaries within that dynamic. Like if you decide to coach your kids, because I think that again, like what I said earlier, about advocating for myself between when I needed mom or when I needed dad, and versus the coach, and I would encourage other people to create their own rules, to steal the 15-minute rule, like, or at least create a space where your child feels comfortable enough to advocate for themselves and to actually tell you what you need or not, because I think that, a lot of times we'll see the examples that some of these star athletes create, like that their parents will go on and tell them like how much they pushed their kid, how much they did this, how much they did that, and it's romanticized a little bit. But like that's one in a million. There's only so many that actually get to that point where it's worth, you know, doing those type of things. But, luckily for me, I had pretty good I definitely have great relationships with you guys now, but I think that between for me and mom, for me, like the coaching dynamic definitely hurt us a little bit at some point. But again, like I just think it's great that we're able to have those conversations now because, it doesn't always get fixed and everything.
I have to speak on this. I feel like I'm sitting here and I was there stay quiet, but you know what? No, this is where we're gonna air it out because there's parents that do this, and I was not happy with your dad. That like you said, you got snatched because you left, deservingly so. You should have been snatched, right? But like you said, that I did not approve of dad yelling out in the middle of the gym, "You suck!" Like,
Don't remember that part, but
yeah,
I don't either because I was talking directly to her in her face when she stormed right past me.
you suck. So I want to say this because it is important because there's a lot of parents that do that, and typically they're more the men, right? The men that are like, I'm gonna tell them like it is. Like at the end of the day, Ashley was coming off of a state championship, right? Because your last summer playing is going into your senior year. That was your last summer with us. You just won a state championship. Confidence is on high. You signed with Texas, a nationally ranked program. Like, you feeling good about yourself. But then you have your father, who you have in high regard. You respect him as your dad, number one, but as a coach. So now he's shouting, yelling at you, you suck. You're going to play yourself out of a scholarship and da 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 da. Now you're questioning yourself a little bit. Like, as parents, they got coaches that tell them that shit. They got coaches that are going to tell them, keep it real and do all that stuff. Playing us out, I was never a fan of that, because I thought it lent itself where now you're doubting yourself. Like, no,
But I'm going to stand up for myself here. Uh, I was not doing that to Ashley until she was tripping. So it ain't like I pushed her into being, like thinking or overthinking, right? Like she was struggling, right? And so sometimes as a coach, as a father, if my kid is struggling and I know them, like I might do something that's outside of my character in order to push them to the next level. So yes, that game I was telling her that now that I remember, I was telling her in that game, but that wasn't the first game that she had been struggling,
yeah,
right? And then she walked off the bench. I don't care. Listen,
for
like
sure.
yeah, yeah.
I'm with you on that. I said she
I
deserved that shit. Snatch
never
her ass back over
understood.
here.
But if you cannot walk off the bench,
Yeah,
and I'm
1000%.
gonna throw your brother under the bus here because when he was about 7, he
Oh,
was playing basketball, and Andre not he didn't run off the bench. He ran out in the middle of the game and left 4 people on the court because he was dealing with his emotion. Uh, I think there are rules in the game that I thought for Ashley, because she's her coach's kid and the leader of the team, she could not do. And that was the thing that frustrated me and why I went into the hallway. Because you can be mad. She could have talked back to me. She could have done anything right there on that bench. But as soon
hmm.
as she ran into the hallway, especially with her new college coach sitting there watching the game, I thought that was something that she shouldn't have done. Now, I do admit, right? Like as a father, as a coach, I shouldn't have like done what I did to her right when she came out of the game. So I will admit that I made a mistake in that way. But that foyer thing, I'm not apologizing for that one.
And you shouldn't. That was deserved. We both agree on that.
If people see what
Ashley
I
does
really
too.
went through now, people seeing what it really was. No.
It's funny.
Yeah, so I guess I want to see if there's anything in terms of, you know, that dynamic of coaching your kids, if there's anything else that you guys want to say, or bring to the table and kind of give you guys a little bit more space in this area.
I mean, I would deter people from doing it, especially early, because they are with their kids so much. I think that it's great when somebody else can have a bit of a different influence, right? Because your mom and I didn't need anybody to train you, right? We could train you and give you the skill work. I think it's cool that you go out and play for somebody else and hear a different voice. I know that there are people who have a great relationship with their kid and it's easy flow. But I would challenge you to really look at that to see if it's going to be something that's not just beneficial for the game, but beneficial for your life, right? Because the father daughter, mother daughter relationship is much more important than coach player. And so anything you can do to protect that relationship and that dynamic, I think you should do it at the highest level.
Um, I'm kind of teetering. I agree. If it's not avoidable, I mean, at the end of the day, um, yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's doable, but you're teetering a fine line, and you really have to have a level of conversation and a strong relationship with your child, um, to navigate that safely. Because at the end of the day, you can create traumas for your child Clearly, you can. And you can push them to the next level. I think it all depends. Um, I would say my biggest thing for parents is if you are in that position and you're coaching your kid, that's not like, that shouldn't be like the number one thing. It shouldn't be the number one thing. And if you keep that in mind, it shouldn't be the number one thing if it's not your kid either at the end of the day, right? We should be caring about young people as people first. So, not even just as a parent, we should be caring about people first, who they are as human beings, and then guiding them and so on and so forth. So I don't see a problem with coaching your kid, but it is a fine line and you do have to set boundaries. I thought with me, Ashley, I thought you did a good job of advocating for yourself in that space. I thought you always let me know, Mom, I need this. Dad has this rule. We need this rule. And you probably doubled mine. Mine was like a whole day. We can't talk, like, so it's possible. It's possible, guys, but show up in love always. You don't get redos as a parent. You just don't get the redos and you don't get years back. You can only learn from mistakes. So do your best to minimize some of those that are costly.
All right, well, that's all I've got for you guys. I really do appreciate you guys being vulnerable and open about this, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. So that's it for today. Thank you guys.
Love
Thank you.
you.
Yes, we love you.
Love you guys too.